Ghost towns are silent witnesses to the tragedies and mistakes of humanity. I welcome everyone to the channel. In this video, you will see 10 of the most mysterious and creepy places on the planet where time has stopped. Gamsutl, Dagestan. As recently as the mid-20th century, life was thriving here. Shops and a hospital were operating. People kept livestock and worked in agriculture. Today, however, the village is completely uninhabited and abandoned, with its last resident having passed away in 2015. The village of Gamsudul is located in Russia, in the Republic of Dagestan, and is part of the Gunipsky Municipal District. It sits atop a mountain peak at an altitude of 1,500 meters above sea level, 152 kilometers from Makachkala. Until the mid-20th century, Gamsudul was an ordinary mountain settlement. Despite being surrounded by mountains and hills, it had a decent infrastructure. It was accessible by both horseback and motor vehicles. There was trade, medical services, and even a mobile cinema would occasionally visit. In the 1930s, nearly 250 people lived here. However, starting in the 1970s, people gradually began to leave their native village for cities or other settlements closer to civilization and work opportunities. The last resident of Gamsutl was Abdul-Jalilov. This elderly man lived alone for almost 14 years until his death in 2015. He alone chose not to leave the home where he was born and raised. Balestrino is a little-known ghost town located about 70 kilometers southwest of Genoa, Italy. It was founded in the 11th century when the village of Balestrino belonged to the Abbey of San Pietro dei Monti. The settlement was built around a castle, which formed the upper part of the town, while the lower part developed around the parish church of St. Andrew. By 1860, approximately 850 people lived there, mostly farmers who cultivated olives and made a living from olive oil production. At the end of the 19th century, the northwestern coast of Italy was struck by several earthquakes. One of them, in 1887, with a magnitude of 6.7, destroyed several villages in the Savona region. Although no official records show that Balestrino was directly affected, this event coincides with major restoration work in the town and a noticeable decline in population. It wasn't until 1953 that the town was officially abandoned due to geological instability. The remaining residents, around 400 people, were relocated. A little-known ghost town is Gilman, located in the state of Colorado, USA. In the 1860s, Colorado was swept by a gold rush, followed by a silver rush 20 years later. Until 1878, silver mining was unprofitable, but after the passage of the Bland-Allison Act, which required the U.S. Treasury to purchase silver for coinage, silver prices rose sharply. This led to active mining operations and the emergence of new settlements, including Gilman. After the silver buyback was repealed in 1893, prices collapsed and most mines shut down. Gilman, however, survived thanks to the high content of zinc and lead in its local ore. The settlement shifted focus to mining these minerals and became an important center, especially due to the needs of the defense industry. Over time, it grew into a fully developed town with a store, club, post office, and kindergarten. By 1970, Gilman had produced 10 million tons of ore, marking the peak of its development. In the 1980s, as zinc prices fell, the mine and the town's owner, Gulf Plus Western, began downsizing operations. By 1981, only 30 families remained in the town. Over a century of mining, 8 million tons of toxic waste had accumulated in Gilman, contaminating groundwater in the river. Authorities decided that tourism was more important than industry, and in 1984, Gilman was shut down. By 1985, it was completely abandoned, a ghost town with deserted houses and mines, surrounded by warning signs. The lost city of Kolmanskop, Namibia, has a history tied to the diamond rush that swept through the country in the early 20th century. In 1904, the first diamond was discovered in Namibia, and from that moment, fortune seekers flooded the area. Among them was August Stauch, a German who took a job as a chief railway foreman in the area around the port city of Luderitz on the Atlantic coast. In his spare time, he had a passion for mineralogy and even obtained a license for diamond prospecting. He asked his subordinates to look for unusual shiny stones in the sand. One of them succeeded, In 1908, a railway worker named Zacharias Lawala spotted several small diamonds right on the desert surface. Stach quickly bought up the surrounding land and founded a settlement there. To mine for diamonds, he invited fellow Germans, and soon Kolmanskop turned into a model German town, complete with neat houses, a town hall, a school, a hospital, a theater, a casino, and a sports stadium. What's more, Kolmanskop was home to the first X-ray station in the Southern Hemisphere and the first tram in Africa. For about 2 decades, things went well. There weren't vast quantities of diamonds, but like all Namibian diamonds, they were of exceptional purity. Their origin was simple. Underground rivers washed the minerals from rock formations into the ocean. The surf carried them ashore, and the wind scattered them across the desert with the sand. But year after year, the number of diamonds dwindled, and people saw little reason to stay. Gradually, they began to leave, and the mass exodus came after the discovery of Namibia's largest diamond deposits in 1928. The new site was located 270 kilometers away from Kolmanskop, and its residents rushed there to seek their fortune, some even abandoning all their possessions. By the 1950s, Kolmanskop was completely deserted, but today it can no longer be called lifeless. This diamond ghost town has become a popular tourist destination. The abandoned mining town of Humberstone, located in the Atacama Desert in Chile, was once one of the country's largest centers for nitrate extraction. The settlement was founded in 1872 to develop a deposit of this mineral, which was used as fertilizer for agriculture. In this now deserted ghost town, one can still see preserved workers' houses built in the English style, a narrow-gauge railway with small wagons, mines, a hospital, a public swimming pool, a school, a church, and even a theater with a large hall, stage, and curtain. A total of 3,500 miners from Chile, Peru, and Bolivia lived and worked here. Humberstone's peak came during the 1920s to 1940s, but the depletion of sodium nitrate reserves affected production. In 1958, mining operations ceased and the site was shut down. In the 1970s, Humberstone was declared a National Monument of Chile. In 2005, the ghost town was added to the UNESCO World Heritage List. The forgotten settlement of Pyramiden, Norway, is located at the foot of the mountain of the same name on the shores of the Petunia and Mimer Bays, on the island of Western Spitsbergen. Active construction of the mine and workers' settlement with supporting infrastructure began in 1939 and continued until August 1941, when all valuable equipment was destroyed during an evacuation. Otherwise, Pyramiden was not damaged during the military actions in the Svalbard archipelago. Construction resumed in 1946, when 609 polar workers arrived in Pyramiden. The Severnaya northern mine produced its first coal in 1956, becoming the northernmost coal mine in the world, a title it held until 1998. One unique feature of this mine is that its entrance is located 400 meters above sea level. The settlement was built as a showcase of the USSR on Norwegian Svalbard, and in addition to industrial facilities, included a hospital, dormitories and housing for engineers and technical staff, a school and kindergarten, a cafeteria and cultural center, a sports complex with a swimming pool and saunas, greenhouses and a pig farm. In the 1970s and 1980s, the town thrived, with a population reaching 1,000 people. Everything here was the northernmost Lenin Monument, the northernmost swimming pool, and the northernmost lawn, for which several shiploads of black soil were imported. The mine was shut down in 1998. The main reasons for closure were limited coal reserves and the high and ever-increasing costs of extraction and controlling an endogenous fire that had broken out in one of the tunnels in 1970 and has not been extinguished to this day. During its operation, the Severnaya mine produced about 9 million tons of coal. As part of the shutdown process, facilities posing an environmental risk were dismantled. Machu Picchu, which means Old Mountain, is a mysterious Incan city built in the mid-15th century and the main attraction that draws travelers on tours through Peru. It is located about 100 kilometers from the Inca Empire's capital, Cusco, high in the mountains at an altitude of 2,450 meters above sea level. So well hidden in the Andes, it remained undiscovered by the Spanish colonizers. In 2007, 100 million people voted to include Machu Picchu among the new 7 wonders of the world. And since 1983, it has been listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The construction of Machu Picchu is astonishing even today. Stones were transported from distant quarries, dragged down slippery clay slopes, hauled over logs, and then polished so perfectly that even now, you can't fit a knife blade between the joints. Machu Picchu blends seamlessly with the surrounding landscape, which is why it's often called the city in the sky or city among the clouds. The triangular roofs of its buildings seem to be a natural part of the scenery. It is an engineering and architectural masterpiece. To build such a city, the Incan builders needed deep knowledge of topography, geology, astronomy, and ecology. Natural slopes were used in the construction, and the building techniques provided stability even on inclines of up to 40 degrees or during earthquakes. The city existed for just over 100 years, until 1532, when Spanish conquistadors invaded the Incan Empire. Around that time, the inhabitants of Machu Picchu mysteriously disappeared. One theory suggests that Machu Picchu was dependent on Cusco for food supplies. When the Spanish arrived and those supplies were cut off, hunger eventually forced the residents to abandon the city. Sanji is a small but fairly well-known location situated on the northern coast of Taiwan. The futuristic complex of buildings resembling a cluster of flying saucers began construction in 1975. The authorities planned to complete the project and profit from its opening, but during the final stages, they were unable to reach a consensus to move forward. As a result, by the end of 1989, construction in Sanji was permanently halted. Time was not kind to Sanji. What remained untouched by humans was eventually destroyed by nature. The concrete and fiberglass structures crumbled under the pressure of growing roots, and the wooden beams rotted from rain and wind. The official explanation for Sanji's unfortunate fate was the global economic downturn at the time. However, there is another theory as to why the UFO-like housing project was never completed. According to this version, the site experienced an unusually high number of car accidents and fatal incidents during construction. Workers reportedly died almost daily from bizarre and inexplicable causes. Some fell from the slippery roofs to their deaths, and others even committed suicide. Legend has it that during the construction, workers unearthed the remains of around 20,000 Dutch soldiers from the 17th century. According to the same workers, that's when the spirits of the disturbed soldiers began to appear, allegedly causing the increase in suicides and strange, deadly accidents. The small town of Calico is located about halfway between Los Angeles and Las Vegas. The town is nestled at the foot of one of the many reddish-brown hills in the area. In the 1880s, Calico was a booming silver mining town, considered large and prosperous for its time. It had around 1,200 residents and featured shops, bars, hotels, a red light district, and even its own Chinatown. At its peak, there were about 500 mines, and silver mining brought in $20 million over a 12-year period. But by 1907, silver prices had dropped, and mining operations ceased. The miners packed up their belongings, loaded them onto wagons, and left in search of a better life. The town got a second life in 1951, when local entrepreneur Walter Knott purchased the land where the town was located. The abandoned and half-ruined mining town was transformed into a theme park, allowing visitors to step back into the silver mining boom era. Most of the buildings in the town were rebuilt, but they were aged so skillfully that it's hard to tell which ones are original and which are modern reconstructions. Fortlandia was a failed utopian project founded in 1928 by American automobile industrialist Henry Ford in the Brazilian Amazon. The goal was to create a self-sufficient city and rubber plantation to supply the Ford Motor Company with raw materials needed for producing tires, hoses, and other car parts. Ford purchased a large tract of land in the Brazilian state of Pará and built a town with American-style infrastructure, wooden houses, schools, hospitals, restaurants, and even golf courses. However, he ignored the local climate, agricultural conditions, and cultural context. Workers suffered from the hot climate, disease, strict discipline, American food regulations, and low wages, all of which led to a riot in 1930. Ford also failed to realize that the Brazilian environment was unsuitable for rubber tree, Hevea brasiliensis, plantations. The trees were ravaged by fungi and pests, and the plantation quickly became unproductive. The project turned into a financial failure, and in 1945, the Ford Motor Company sold it off. Today, Fortlandia is a partially abandoned settlement, a symbol of utopian ambition, cultural miscalculation, and the failure of imposing industrialization in an alien environment using an American blueprint.